So I suppose we can talk amongst each other after we complete the class. No? See, in the first two sessions I tried to give an overview. One, how an empirical study which we started sometime in 1993-94 unveiled before us a different picture about the country, its economic and financial model, which is allied to its social moorings, culture, traditions, way of life. All this at one point in the economic theory making was part of economics itself. Economics got divorced from way of life of people only in the last 40-50 years. Before that, the subject of economics was an extension of sociology, and it was not only an extension of sociology, it had also a philosophic mooring. It was called a worldly philosophy, and economists were known as worldly philosophers. But today's economics has nothing to do with these very concepts, terms. It has become a subject of mathematics. How this has led to a whole lot of consequences, and what led to this, unless it is understood by people who are concerned with finance, business, economics, policy making, and generally about how to handle India's problems, it will be impossible to handle the problems, because the problems generated by the leader is exported to the world. That is what I am going to tell you in the next two classes I will start today. The subject we are handling is Indian financial and management model, but there is nothing called a financial model which is divorced from economic model. Economic and financial models are very much linked. So when we are talking about financial model, we invariably talk about economic model, and what goes into making and structuring and giving shape to the economic model is what is going to be our concern as to whether India has its own economic model, and whether different countries have their own economic model, or as the economists say, the law of economics are universal. It applies everywhere in the same way, and it has been so routinely repeated without being tested. I want to give an initial opening to your mind as to how wrong it can be. You know, when you cut down the interest rates, the savings should fall. This is what was done in Japan. Japan went into a depression, a recession for 10 years. It lost 10 years. And Japanese society, like the Indian society, is a savings driven society, because when there is a family orientation to a society, that society has a tendency to save. It not only has a tendency to save, it seeks safe savings. What is safe savings? Bank deposits, insurance, pension. It keeps away from stock market. If you find Japan is one of those countries in whose stock markets, financial markets, the most up to date, most modern financial instruments are offered and traded. Despite that, till now only 11% of Japanese savings is invested in stock market. I am just giving you an overview, do not take it as something which I am saying for the entire class today. Japan equity is 11%, bank deposits 51%, and of course insurance and other things constitute the balance, virtually if you look at this, all others are safe savings, that will be about 38%. This savings pattern has been continuing for a long time. You must have heard about Japanese postal savings. Japan has one of the most organized and traditionally working post office like India's. They have about close to about 1.7 lakh post offices, and their postal savings alone is $1.8 trillion, and the banks, 51% bank savings constitutes about 155% of their GDP. Why do the Japanese invest in banks? And what kind of interest rates they are being offered? It is very important. In 1991, when Japan went into recession, the Japanese savings rates carried about 6% return, bank deposits. Then the Japanese economy was flat, it was not going up at all. So the World Bank, IMF and others began advising Japan, generally the American economic thinking, about which I will come to later, but I am only taking one part out of it to show how the same law does not operate in the same way in different societies. So they said, unless you cut down the interest rates, people are going to keep on saving, and it is better you cut down the interest rate, and then they will begin spending. And also the government is borrowing money, and if you have to borrow money, you need to borrow money at a cheaper rate, and if you cut down the rate of interest, people will look for stocks, because bank deposits are not fetching returns. So people will move to stocks, and the stock markets will rise. When the stock market rises, then there will be greater returns. So a economy will prosper if you move to stock market. That is how they began cutting down the interest rates from 5 to 6, but the people kept saving. So 6 to 5, and then from 5 to 4 they cut the interest rate. The Japanese kept on saving. 4 to 3 they kept on saving. 3 to 2 they kept on saving. 2 to 1 they kept on saving. In the year 2001, the government said that on a short term deposit of less than 1 year, the interest rate will be nil. Even then they kept on saving. In the year 2002, the government said, if you have to save, you have to give money to the bank to keep your money. Then they gave the money to keep that money, and again kept on saving in bank. It is a very, very important lesson which we have to draw. This economic law will not operate in England or in America or in any other country. I am going to show you India has reacted in the same way, because not only people want to save despite the returns being poorer or no return, they also want to save in the safe savings model in which they believe in. There is a beautiful article written by the Bank of Japan officials in the website of the Bank of International Settlements after the financial crisis of 2008, in which these are all original researchers. Unfortunately, much of this research is non-institutional in the world. These researches will not be allowed to be done by institutions, because the funding institutions will not allow this research. Unless you have individuals who are motivated to find out what is the real truth and why the Japanese behave this way, unless you want to find it out, you will not be able to get at what is the truth behind, what is the fact, what is the data, what is the behavioral pattern which makes people behave this way. This is Bank of International Settlements, BIS paper number 46, May 2009. It is important before I read this paper to tell you the American criticism of the Japanese economic model, financial model, has always been that these people do not know how to invest their money efficiently. The Japanese have no efficient model of investment, they do not take risk, and they are so secure about their money, a sense of security is needed, and so it is an inefficient financial model. You know, when the financial meltdown took place in 2008, in the website of Bank of Japan, they bore this criticism for 20 years. In the website of the Bank of Japan, in March 2009, there was only one sentence: the world financial markets are in turmoil, Japanese finances are safe. You must understand, 20 years they waited to show that your financing model is unstable. I will not call it inefficient. Whatever you have done with it, we are safe, you are not safe. After that, the Bank of Japan officials wrote this article, the household balance sheet of Japan. The title is a note on the Japanese household debt, international comparisons and implications for financial stability. This was the title on which the two Japanese Bank of Japan officials wrote this article. It is a very important paper, BIS paper number 46, you can access in the website. Japan saving model is bank deposits 51%, bonds 3%, stocks 11%, mutual fund 5%. This is not mutual fund which invests in stocks, it is fixed mutual funds. Then life insurance 26%, others 5%. The question they raise: why do Japanese households prefer deposits so much over risky financial assets when all financial instruments are well developed and heavily traded in Japan, unlike in other Asian markets? You do not find this kind of efficient, most modern financial instruments being traded in any other financial market, including in Singapore. It is Tokyo market which actually is the replica of the western markets, but when such updated financial instruments are being traded so heavily, but why do the Japanese prefer to invest in banks? You know what is the 5-year deposit interest rate in Japan? 0.8%, but still they invest in banks. Why do they do it? We would argue that the conservative approach to debt, it is because they are more keen on liquid assets. Once you are keen on liquid assets, when you take loan, your assets are fully secured by your, for example, if you take stocks and you are borrowing money, then you are leveraging on the stock. Here it is cash versus cash, even if they take loan, even then their borrowing is very low. We would argue that the conservative approach to debt taken by the households mitigated the effects of decade-long economic slump. Indeed, household bankruptcies were not widely recorded in that period. It is an amazing fact. 10 years the nation does not grow, it is flat, but household bankruptcies are not recorded. Why? Because of this liquid savings, despite fall in interest rates, despite the government saying in 2002 that you have to keep, if you want to keep your money with us, you have to pay money to keep your money. It is a very peculiar, the government was trying to force the people to spend, they were not. Why I am mentioning this is, at an appropriate time I will weave it into an alternative financial model which exists apart from the Anglo-Saxon financial model, which has been hawked as the world's model, universal model for everybody to accept. There is an alternative financial model which we do not even look at, because the Japanese do not publish their economic model in English. See how much English can misinform you of a truth which exists very near to you, behaviorally close to you. and still you won't look at it, because you do not think there is any example other than the English speaking nations. It is a very, very important deficit in the Indian approach to seeking truth, and not recorded in that period, because the quantity of safe liquid assets such as bank deposits, postal savings were always greater than the debt on the average household balance sheet. We would venture to say that the Japanese household sector, far from being a shock originator, is a shock absorber. This is their pointed criticism at the Americans, because it is the American household sector which generated the American crisis, exported that crisis all over the world and turned it into a global financial crisis. One sentence, they did not accuse America, they said our families are not shock originators, we are shock absorbers. You understand there is another economic model which caters to the behavioral model of the people. This is what I want you to understand when we are trying to talk about Indian economic, financial, business management model. Management does not mean managing a company, managing savings, managing investment, managing households, and even managing an educational institution. The model is different. You know, I found in some American universities, the academics there are being trained how to look at the Indian students. Did I tell you last time? I do not know. They tell the professors there, do not be shocked if the students from Asia stand up when you come to the class, and if they address you as sir, do not swoon, they will not call you by name, they will stand up. You know, this used to be a criticism of the Asian students, but in 2009 Yale University conducted a study. Why? Because there are 4% Asian Americans, the total population of Asian Americans is 4%, but their admission in high end educational institutions like Harvard, Stanford and Carnegie Mellon is about 36%, 35%. They are shocked. How is it that these fellows are dominating these high end financial institutions? When they studied, in the study it came out, the reason why they are doing so well is because they obey their parents at home and teachers in the class. This is available, you can see it on the net. There is a behavioral model in the educational institutions. There is a management model. Management means management of the mind and the conduct and the behavior of the people anywhere they may be. It may be in the farm, it may be in the class, it may be in crowd, it may be anywhere. So when we are talking about Indian business, financial, Indian economic, business, financial management model, it is all integrated into one, and I am going to tell you how managing the household in the way in which Indian households are managed has an impact on savings, has an impact on investment, has an impact on consumption, and how the household savings at the micro level when aggregated becomes the macro savings model of India. Unless our mind is open to this. This is 20 years when I have been studying the Indian society. What shocked me was that none of our great intellectuals, economic thinkers, policy makers studied the Indian society. I will tell you now about economics, how economics grew. Actually, if you look at the evolution of economics, first it is Karl Marx, then Ricardo, first Adam Smith, Ricardo, and then Karl Marx. All these people studied the society and then theorized the conduct from the social moorings, culture, the conflicts within society. So they studied the society and theorized. Then social changes took place in the West, because when we are talking about economics, unless we understand that it is an autogenous growth in the West, we can never understand economics as it evolved and as it is today. So from the West, when economics evolved, First was classical economics. Study of society, humans, because there was society at that time. This is very important. There was society, people had relationships, people were interdependent, families were in existence, neighborhood was in existence, there was large interdependence among the people. So there was society. This is classical economics. Then came the American rise. You must understand, America's rise is one of the most significantly different rise from other societies, because the quote unquote American society ceased to exist. It is only the colonizers who formed the society, who came from different countries, from different regions, with the different languages, with the different behavioral patterns, maybe perhaps with the same religion. Otherwise there was nothing. Religion alone cannot regulate the conduct of the people or make them behave in a particular way, except to look at a particular god. Otherwise conduct is different. The way a Greek behaves is not the way in which an English will behave. So the societies are different. But these individuals picked up from different society, they had to be forged into a nation, and that is why they said it is a melting pot, because there is nothing. Individually all of them were brought together and they have been beaten and shaped into a nation. This is how American nationality was originally described. Important point is America's rise and depression of 1934 led to Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics accepted the fundamentals of classical economics, which said that market is the ultimate arbiter. If it is goods, it is dependent on demand and supply, and the prices are determined. If it is capital, the demand for capital and supply of capital determines the interest rates. This is how it said economics operates on its own. This is how Adam Smith postulated it, and Karl Marx questioned it, that this whole thing is only to serve a certain section of the society, this has to be broken up. But he also accepted that is the way it functions. The important point about Karl Marx's objection to capitalism is that capitalism will function this way, but it should not be allowed to function. So there was no actually difference between Karl Marx in his theorizing of economics based on the behavior of the people and the way Adam Smith theorized and Karl Marx objected. It accepted that market is an important instrument, but it serves the interests of the powerful people, the entrenched people, the people first occupiers, and so it is not worthwhile and it has to be broken up. So all of them observed the society, and Karl Marx wanted to find a solution to the society's way it has produced a pyramid, and the pyramid has to be broken, but the fact remains he also accepted. But here the demand and supply market, everything was operating, but there was depression. Then Keynes came out with a beautiful explanation that and you have to keep your body very well, you have to do exercises every time, otherwise if you don't maintain your body, just as you become flabby and your movements are restricted. The same thing happens to market also. If the market is not efficiently maintained, the market develops catch, it becomes flabby, it becomes inefficient, and it slows down for no reason. So he said in this situation state has to intervene. And according to the original theory, savings produces investment, but he said savings and investment alone is not sufficient, government has to pump in money and artificially prop up the economy, then the economy will rise. He proved to be right. That is precisely how the US economy recovered. But from this to this, society began declining. By 1970-90, society had become virtually non-existent. And accordingly the theories also changed. How the society became non-existent? You must have heard about Max Weber, about whom I will say in detail later. He is the father of modern Western civilization. He is the one who expounded the idea, after studying the Western societies, that urbanization will lead to individualism, and he expounded the concept of methodological individualism. This is very important because this is where the whole contrast between the Western society and our society is going to be. Methodological individualism. He said you need not have to study the society, you have to study the behavior of individuals and then aggregate them into the society. The idea of society is imaginary. And then Karl Popper extended it very clearly. There is nothing called society. This is the biggest self injury inflicted by the West upon itself. Once they disowned the society, it today led to no family. Families have ceased to exist. About the consequences of all this I will go into it. With the result, individualism dominated. So the economic theories, neoclassical or modern economic theories, were founded on individualism and methodological individualism. This is a very important factor which we have to gather. Then came rational economic man, rational economic theory, and rational market, that is the efficient market. This is how economics evolved from being a subject related to the society into a subject related to just individuals. In fact, there is a beautiful research done by one Bobsworth. He was an economist attached to the Brookings Institution. I will give you the reference later because the context is coming, I am saying this. He studied the savings model, Brookings Institution economist, and he studied the savings model of America and the savings model of Asia, and he put it beautifully. He said the Asian model and US model are like this. He said the Asian savings model is dynastic, the American savings model is personal. That is the development in this period. You will not normally find in the analysis of how economics evolve as if this evolved from this. No, this is an autogenous evolution because of the decline of the society and even the family is ceasing to exist and becoming just a collection of individuals, and more importantly a relation based society becoming a contract based society. This important shift took place in the last 100 years in the West. It had huge social consequences, it had huge economic consequences. It changed the method people looked at money, it changed the method people invested the money, it changed the method by which distribution amongst the people were taking place outside the formal system, whether it is government or the market. This change has not taken place in Asia. So when we are talking about economic model, we have to factor in that the economic theories which have been developed in the West, that is why in the West if savings rate is cut, people begin spending, they do not save. And if the government wants people to spend, they cut the interest rates. And if they want people to be shifted from banks to stock market, they cut the interest rates. If the inflation rates go up, and they up the interest rate so that people spend less. So you understand everything is related to a particular course of conduct which has been observed in an individualist society. But that is not how economics is taught here. In fact, I have tried to find out, India is a hugely family oriented society. If you look at census 1951 to 2001, for which statistics is available as to how many people are living in a household in India, in spite of all this urbanization, quote unquote modernization, the number of people living in a house in villages is about 5.1 per household, and it is about 5.4 in urban areas. It has almost remained the same. I don't know, 2011 figures have not come. Why I am saying this is that this family as a unit is not only a social unit or cultural unit, it is also an economic unit. And it safeguards unemployed people, infirm people, aged people, and that is not the case in the West, particularly in the Anglo-Saxon countries. Of course, to some extent in Germany it is there, in France it is there, in Italy it is there, in Spain it is there, but these are all continental countries, continental European countries. So the behavior or the structure of the society, including the family, brings about a totally different set of financial behavior, economic behavior, savings model, investment model, consumption model. So unless we understand this, the need to study whether there is an Indian economic model at all or not will never arise in our mind. So first we have to understand that there is a different milieu which is operating. Unless we understand that, it will be difficult for us, and an idea of an Indian economic model will look theoretical. It is not theoretical, it is a practical requirement. In fact, it is even more a requirement, as I will tell you how the Western economic theories are failing, admitted to be a failure by the Guild of Economists itself. And I will read out to you literature which shows the economists have said we have no economic theory functioning today. All the economic theories trotted out of the laboratories of the West in the last 30 years have been useless at worst, at best, or positively harmful at worst. This is how Paul Krugman, who was awarded Nobel Prize in 2008, described the work, and they bet each other, abused each other like cats and dogs. All these famous economists who were given Nobel Prize after the 2008 crisis. because economic policies also resulted in the disintegration of the societies and families. So unless you handle this animal called economics very carefully, it can do damage to any society. And the Anglo-Saxon economic policies which have done great damage to these Anglo-Saxon societies and families, the French and the Germans, they protested in the G20 meeting on the April 1st that we do not want Anglo-Saxon financial capitalism unless you are going to pass resolutions against it, unless you are going to have more transparency in the financial operations of the tax havens through which these illicit monies come, which generates this inequality, which generates this kind of wrong behavioral model. We are not going to be part of it. Even Sarkozy even threatened to walk out of the G20 meeting unless Obama accepted this, and Obama had to accept it. So these are all things which not very extensively debated in India, but these are all very crucial for India. Japan would debate it, China would debate it, Korea would debate it. I do not know about Indonesia or Malaysia, but these countries would certainly debate. But this is what is happening in the West, this is our differential, how do we do it? Another thing you take, most of Asia is family oriented. Asia generates 75% of the global savings, 75% of the global savings is generated by Asia. Who borrows the maximum, please tell me? How much, you tell me? 75%. Why? Have we ever tried to find out why? Has there been a debate in India why America is borrowing money? Has the Guild of Economists ever tried to reason out why and what would be its consequence? I tell you, I am going to read out something to you, how ridiculous the economic discourse can be. This is Financial Times, 11th February 2004. Carefree US spenders take care of the world economy. Somebody does not tell the Americans your profligacy is going to kill you and kill us. See the first sentence. These are all great economic discourse taking place, and people who are writing it are supposed to be observing everything and informing the people, warning them of the consequences, and see what they write. In recent years, Christopher Swan is one of the most well known economic writers. He writes, in recent years, US consumers have performed the same role in the global economy as the god Atlas did in Greek mythology, supporting the world on their shoulders. I can understand if the Americans had their own savings and they spent money and bought goods from the rest of the world and lifted the global economy. You borrowed money from other countries and spent it like as if it is your own money. You remember there is one philosopher in India who said this? Charvaka. 5000 years before, Charvaka told us that if you want something and you do not have the money, if somebody has the money, you borrow the money and you be happy, you spend that money. If you are not able to repay, do not worry, do not think there is any sin or karma or anything. These fools, they will say so, you do not worry, you will tell him I do not have the money to repay and you be happy with it. This Charvaka economics has been made into a regular economic thinking and celebrated. I will go more into it in detail. As intelligent people, you will understand how we have been mesmerized into thinking what is wrong as right. So all that I want to say you at the moment is that the behavioral model is not the same. I went into the Indian savings model just like the Japanese saving model in the year 2004-05. I will come to it later, take my facts as true for the moment. In 2004, 2005, the interest rate on bank deposits were cut, which was in 1993-94 it was about 11 to 12% on a 3-year deposit. They kept on cutting it down, but the harshest cut was in 2004 and 5. Normally what should happen? People should go to stock market, people should begin spending money, or people should invest in some real estate. No, they began investing in bank more. You know why? It is the housewife's mentality. If I am investing 10,000 rupees for a 10% interest and getting 1000 rupees in return, and if the interest rate is cut to half, I will get only 500 rupees. So naturally I have to invest 20,000 rupees to get the same amount of interest of 1000. This is how bank deposits shot up in that period. Why I am mentioning this is, these are not empirical studies, these are all proven data on which you draw conclusions. So the first point all of us have to be clear when we are going to go through the rest of the sessions here is that the economic behavior of the people is not the same all over the world. So the economic policies will not be the same all over the world, should not be the same all over the world. And if somebody says this is the policy that we adopt and you must adopt this, gentlemen, our conditions are different, we may not be able to avoid. See what the Japanese government did, they kept on slashing the interest rate just because the Americans told them. They did not know how to handle Japan, but Japan handled itself. And in 2008, it is the Japanese family behavior which saved Japan from collapse. So we have got to factor all this, and now I will go into how the third limb, the modern economic theories evolved based on individualism. This is the most important thing, and Lataji, you will now note how individualism affected right from childbirth, child care and the orientation of the family, because she is doing research on the child care aspect, and so she wanted to know the economic linkages of it, and so she wanted to attend it after having heard my lecture in 2010, is that right? And so she mailed to me that this has largely disturbed my mind. So I said, I do not want to disturb your mind, I would like to inform you as to what I am thinking on the subject, and so she has come. What I am saying is, individualism cuts at the root of the family itself. That is why in America, because there is no relationship, father and son do not relate to each other. A son went to Supreme Court in one of the states and got a divorce from the father, because it is, this relationship holds good only when I want to admit this relationship. If I do not want to admit this relationship, there is no relationship. We are all related to each other only as Americans, as co-citizens. If we want to have other relationship, we have to enter into a contract. We have to enter into contract as wife and husband, we have to enter into contract as landlord and tenant, we have to enter into contract as employers and employees. Everything is turned into a contract, the contract based society, bereft of relationship. But in our case, even contracts are only an external appearance of a deeper relationship inside. That is why in India sacking an employee is very difficult. You see, in my advice to the corporates, I have always found this in HR model, sir, that man is a good man, I can't sack him. This will never be heard in America. He may be a good man, but he is not an efficient man. He may be a loyal man, he is not an efficient man, he is not producing results. The economic assessment of a person, it may be worthwhile at one point in time, it may be worthwhile in one area of operation, but it is extended to all areas of operation including the family. 55% of the first marriages end in divorce, because after some time you find the person is not an efficient person. And you test it with another, 67% of the second marriages end in divorce. And if you have the tenacity, 74% of the third marriages end in divorce. You know, it is very important, we laugh it. But you must understand the instability in the society. How chaotic the whole model. You see, I was one of my clients wanted a whole body checkup for me. So when I was in San Jose, he asked one Dr. Sutha to come and check me, and he was a devout Catholic, and my client told me he would like to have a discussion with you because you are also philosophically oriented. He told me he has brought his young boy about 9 or 10. Such a nice boy, very innocent looking, he was sitting and his father was talking to me. He told me, Mr. Gurumurthy, he called me Guru, you see my difficulty. This boy is 10 years old. 2 years back his mother came once and told me, Bob, I don't think we can get along. I don't mind if you keep this child. And she left. He said, the boy is with me. And this happens in every home in India, America. I asked him why, how this country runs then. He told me something very, very psychologically sound. I don't know, these two gentlemen have come from America, they will be able to testify it more than, because I am a casual visitor to America, they are almost permanently resident there. So he told me, if you close down these malls for 1 month, Americans will not know what to do, they will go mad. The only thing they do is to keep buying and buying and buying. He said, I have written off this country, Mr. Gurumurthy. Now why I am saying this is, once you transform natural relationships into casual relationships, once you transform durable relationship into transitory ones, once you transform relationships into contracts, it has its own efficiency, but it has a limited period of durability. That is what is happening. All of us must understand this, that Asia has refused to adopt, despite all the impositions from communist model in China. After 50 years of communism, Francis Fukuyama analyzed China and said there is one element, the strand of China, which has come out unscathed, that is, Confucianism has not been destroyed by communism. China has become Confucian again. They are establishing Confucian societies all over the world, Neo-Confucian society, because that is the soul of China. There is a dialogue between Confucius and the emperor, and the emperor asked Confucius, you are always saying you should respect the parents, you should respect the elders, what about me, I am the emperor. He said, you should also be respected, but it is only after the deference that the sons show to their parents, they should show deference to the emperor. I said, how can you do that? I am managing millions of families. Let us assume a father commits a murder and the son is a witness to it. Should he not come and complain to my police? He said, not at all, he should never do it. I said, what are you saying? Let us assume it is you must have the efficiency to investigate the murder and prove it in spite of the son. And if the son is called to the court to give evidence, what should the son do? He should tell a lie to protect his father. He said, what are you saying? He said, I am saying what I am saying is true, because your empire may not last as long as the institution of parenthood lasts. You see, China's savings is 40% of the GDP. It is the Confucian model. So everything is related to the way the society functions, its milieu, its culture, its way of life. but nothing except interest rates and supply and demand for money decides the interest rates in the economic model of the West. Otherwise, why should there be 75% savings? In fact, Alan Greenspan says, you have heard of Alan Greenspan? He was the one who decided the fate of the world economies for 19 years. And he wrote a book, The Age of Turbulence, in the year 2007, May he published it. If he had waited for one more year, he could never have published that book. In that book he writes, Age of Turbulence, page 385. It is worth reading the entire book, but at least read these 2-3 paragraphs which I suggest. And he is now talking about the nations which save, Asian nations. Despite their lower incomes, households and businesses in developing countries save greater share of their income than do households and businesses in developed countries, a statement of fact. Developed countries have vast financial networks that lend to consumers and businesses, more often backed by collateral security, enabling a significant fraction to spend beyond their current incomes. The idea is you must be able to spend freely. You should not be constrained by the fact that I have less income. You must be able to spend more. Recall Charwaka. Whether you will be able to pay it or not is a different thing. You must have the mentality, the confidence. The nation, the economic model, the leader, the political parties, the media, like what Mr. Swan has done, Christopher Swan, you must make spending casual. Fewer such networks exist in developing nations to entice the people to spend beyond their incomes. It is an inefficient economic model, because you do not have financial networks to entice the people to spend beyond their income. Moreover, most developing nations are still close to bare subsistence that households need to insure against future contingencies. They have to save. But see us, they seek buffer against failure, they seek buffer against future destitution, and since few of these countries have government safety nets, please mark this word, government safety nets, few of these countries have government safety nets to protect against adversity. The only way the households do is to set money aside. They have to save, because the governments do not give social security to them. Unemployed people, infirm people, aged people, retired people, they have to provide for themselves. They have to, not only themselves, they have to protect for their parents, for unemployed sons, sometimes even brother and sisters. So he says, people are forced to save against rainy day and retirement. We need not do, our government takes care of all these people, and so our people need not save. They made savings irrelevant, unnecessary, uneconomic, inefficient. The consequence I am going to tell you in the coming classes. No other country can be like that. How America can be like that, I will tell you. Why America had to follow these policies, I will tell you. But one thing we must understand, that is not a model for anyone, and Americans themselves are realizing it is not a model even for themselves, but they have sold it. A huge machinery and opinion, economic architecture, theories, principles, models have been developed, taught, universalized. You know who said this? Not me. It is Galbraith who said this, one of the finest economists from America, who was a close friend of India. He was an ambassador to India in 1962. He said the entire economic establishment has firmed up an opinion against which you cannot create another opinion. This is funded by World Bank, IMF, Rockefeller Foundation. An alternative research, alternative thought based on an alternative philosophy, way of life, society, impossible. But it does not mean that the alternative does not exist. It does not mean this is the mainline thinking, that is what I am going to tell you later. So the fact is that the economic and financial model which evolved in individualist societies based on the idea of methodological individualism, which is built destroying all relationships, ignoring all relationship, delegitimizing all relationships, legitimizing and celebrating only contracts. The entire theory produced an economic model, and that is the free market capitalism. I have nothing against market, but there is a beautiful theory which has been developed in Japan, in Germany and in France. Market economics is different from market society. You make the society itself function on principles of market, that is what the Anglo-Saxon countries have done. Market society is different from market economics. We can handle market economics. We know where to limit the market. You should not bring the market into home. Then you know what will happen. Divorces. 41% of the babies born in America are born for unwed mothers. 21% of them are born for school going children. This number is 49% in England. The news is by 2015 it will cross 51%. The number of married people, married households in America with children is just 28. If you bring market into house, if you bring individualism into house, if you bring the sense of rights into house, houses function, homes function on duties, a fundamentally different formulation. A rights oriented society's model of behavior cannot be imported into a duty oriented society. If a sense of duty is removed, no economic policy can save India. There are how many educated unemployed people are in India today? 60 million. Who is taking care of them? Not the state, not the family. In fact, the other day I was addressing the IIT management students in Chennai. It is a huge gathering, and I asked them a question. How many of you are being supported by your families for your course? And how many are not? Please, those who are not supported, lift your hand. Out of about 500 people, not a single person lifted his hand. And everyone lifted when I asked who are being supported by the family. I said, if I ask this question in any of the leading educational institutions in America, high-end educational institutions, among the white Americans, I do not think anyone will lift his hand. Do we understand this? What is the sense of duty we must have? A larger understanding of how the economic architecture functions, you have to draw from the cultural and social milieu of a society. You can never look at a cinema and fashion your life. You are looking at a cinema which has nothing to do with you and formulating rules, regulations, behavior model, corporate governance. A whole lot of misconceptions, distortions is taking place precisely because we have been unable to look at ourselves. I will just go into what happened when the 2008 crisis struck America and what these economists did. And Ben Bernanke, who has been there, he was an expert on this depression economics, and he was a very close follower of Milton Friedman, who was second most influential economist, about whom I will tell you later. And these were all the people, and he said, I never knew this was happening. And the man who ran the American economy as the Federal Reserve chairman and the world economy, because the US Federal Reserve System virtually determined the financial policies. He, Alan Greenspan I mean, he made one statement about Japan: there is irrational exuberance in Japan. You know what happened? On this statement, the Japanese stocks fell 3%. He had nothing to do with Japan. He just said there is irrational exuberance because the Japanese stock markets were roaring and the New York stock market was not. So he was asked why. There is irrational exuberance. You must understand the extent of influence he commanded in the world market. He was called the god of money. So he ran the American economy for 19 years, but before the collapse he ran away. So the American Congress examined him. Gentlemen, please tell me what happened. And it is worth reading what he told the US Congress. Why I am reading it out is the entire economic architecture of the world today, which is led by America, is not supported by an valid economic theory. That is the substance. In his mea culpa means confession, before the US Congress in 2008, Greenspan said, the crisis however turned out to be much broader than anything I could have imagined. And they are all very good in explaining in soft language a difficult thing which could never be understood unless a man is really intelligent as him to understand what he is saying. And those of us who look to the self-interest of lending institutions to protect the shareholders' equity, myself especially, I could never imagine it. In recent decades, a vast risk management pricing system had evolved, and all that I will tell you later, Black-Scholes model and all that, containing the best insights of mathematicians, financial experts, supported by major advances in computer and communications technology. The entire human judgment was handed over to computer. Whether stocks for 500 million was to be purchased or not, the computer will decide, because you put the data and press the button, the computer says you purchase, they purchase, because efficient market. Rational human beings, rational behavior. So what they did, instead of deducting the theory from the behavior of the people, they formulated the theory and asked the people to behave accordingly. And if somebody did not behave like that, he is an irrational person, because the theories are rational. It is founded on rational economics, it is founded on rational thinking. If somebody does not behave, for example, if somebody cuts down the interest rate for you to spend, and if you do not spend, you are an irrational person. So all these computers are based on that. If the interest rate is cut, it will become like this, the computer will say, but the human beings are not doing it. A Nobel Prize in economics was awarded for the discovery of the free market pricing model that underpins much of the advances in financial derivatives market. This is Black-Scholes model, about which I will tell you in detail how this Black-Scholes model is responsible for the financial collapse of the world. This was proved in 1998. Black-Scholes model evolved from 1972. Black died. Robert Merton, Myron Scholes. Merton is particularly one of the most brilliant economists, as the West would project him to be, and they carried on the research and they formulated a theory. You can do any amount of leverage on efficient market working, you will never get a loss, you will only make a profit. And when they formulated the theory was put into market in 1986-87 when the derivatives trading began taking place. They were the architect of the derivatives, the philosophy, the structure, the principles, the model, the equations, everything. So in 1994, the long term LTCM, long term capital management, that hedge fund was formed on the advice of these people, and they joined it as advisors, Robert Merton and Myron Scholes. And in 1997, the Nobel team awarded Nobel Prize for this model to these two people, and they began saying we will give 18% return. Funds were standing in queue to invest money in LTCM. So in 1997 they looked at all this, market has approved a theory, obviously it must be a good theory. So they gave Nobel Prize for this. In 1998 LTCM became bankrupt and collapsed. Myron Scholes and Robert Merton went back to teaching, having invested the Nobel Prize money there and lost it. But you know, if only the US Federal Reserve System had accepted that this theory is a failure and declared LTCM as bankrupt and asked the people who invested, come on, hell with you, your money is lost, 2008 crisis would never have taken place. They papered over it, brought all the money and put in their money and made others put in money to save the theory. You know, in the year 2000 the outstanding derivatives were 100 trillion. When the financial crisis took place, in 7 years it went up by 7 times to 700 trillion. The world GDP was only 63 trillion. Derivatives outstanding was 700 trillion on the underlying security of just 15 trillion. Warren Buffett said it is weapons of mass destruction, that is what caused the collapse. What he says, I trusted the Nobel Prize winning theory and operated. But the Nobel Prize winning theories, the persons who gave the prize, they trusted your market. You see, the prize was trusted by the market, but the people who gave the prize, they trusted the market because it is working in the market. I found a flaw in the model that I perceive is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works. I found that my model of how the world works is flawed. That is precisely the reason I was shocked. I still do not fully understand why it happened, and obviously to the extent that I figure in it, and why I shall change my views. You can understand the man who said savings is unnecessary, you must spend, you must give money to people, spend whatever they want. You know, this is what produced this. I am going to show you figures which will shock you. No rational person could tolerate that kind of figures, and that was supposed to be the output of an efficient economic theory. And how the whole world is sitting on an explosive today which can blow up any economy. The first economy to be blown up will be the American economy, because economics has changed the lifestyle of the people. You cannot restore relationships between husband and wife, father and son, brother and brother, sister and brother. You cannot create families by law or economic theories. Americans are offering tax exemptions for husband and wife to live together, but is that the purpose for which will somebody will live together? You have broken the families by psychology, by rights. So it is a huge confusion, social, cultural, behavioral confusion, which has produced an economic theory and an architecture which has again cut at the root of the very family structure. That is what has caused the collapse. This is, I am giving you in substance, for which I am going to give you proofs later, and tomorrow we will go into how in 2008 crisis, when the crisis occurred, which Bernanke said I never visualized, and Alan Greenspan said I was shocked. These are all the people, the manufacturers of crisis. How did these people react? And what is the cause and consequence of it? And why we must study America? Because we are obsessed with America first. Second, we are following America. Third, it is not their theories, their philosophies, their way of life, their economic model is proving to be unsuitable for them. Countries like Germany and France, which are as efficient as America, rejected them. And what should we do? This we will see in the next few classes. Thank you very much. If you have any question, we can field it in the next 10 minutes.
I've just asked the question, why is dollar, in spite of whatever Guruji said, is going up and rupee is going down?
See, you leave the rupee aside. Why is the dollar a strong currency in the world? So let us look at it, then why it is going against up against the rupee will be implied. You know, between 1970 and 2011, the total debts of US went up by 64 times. Government debt went up by 39 times. External debt went up by 160 times. 1970 to 2011. This should have destroyed any country, but this is what made America strong. You know why? Debt is a liability you owe. So, Venkatramanan, the former Reserve Bank governor, wrote an article in Business Line newspaper in 2004 about America. He said, if somebody borrows 5 crores from a bank, the bank manager will harass that fellow who has borrowed 5 crores. When are you going to be? Show me the security, I will come and inspect. What are you doing? How is your business? Why is it? Sales is going down. Let us assume he had borrowed 10,000 crores. The bank chairman will go to the borrower's place. Are you okay? Is everything okay with you? Because the bank solvency depends on the borrower's solvency. You know, the solvency of America is the concern of the entire world today. Out of the $12 trillion forex reserves of the world, $9 trillion is US dollars. And how America flooded the country, flooded the world. Many people think, you know, renminbi will become the global currency, or euro will become the global currency. How idiotic these things are, I will tell you in 1 minute. Why American dollar became a global currency? Of course, there is a history. After the history, how gold backed by dollars, but dollar backed by gold became equal to gold. That is how it finally entered the world as a global currency. But afterwards what happened? America began running trade deficits. It ran a trade deficit of $8 trillion between 1976 and 2009. How do you get another country's currency? Either it must lend money to you, or it must invest in you, or it must import goods from you. Which is the easiest mechanism by which you would like to get other countries' money? Exports. The world exported to America. And I will tell you, the American decline of families, decline of savings made America a borrower. It could not pay for its imports. It began printing currency and buying goods. In 1989, the Economist magazine wrote a beautiful article. The most efficient export oriented unit in America is the dollar printing industry. They export dollars and import goods. We were all very happy, we were getting dollars. China is the most foolish country in the world. $3.5 trillion they have just twisted the body of the Chinese and exported, and out of this $3.5 trillion, 60% is in terms of US dollars. That is the condition. Whatever export surplus we run, 60% you should keep, you should deposit back to us. This was called petrodollar theory, which developed in 1970, and that is how dollar and petrol got related. It is a huge story which I will try to tell you in one class if it is possible. So the fact is, America has co-opted the world economy into America, so everybody is going to the temples to pray for America. That is why the US dollar is strong. If the US dollar collapses, you know who will be the worst hit today? China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, India. You know, out of your $300 billion forex reserve, $200 billion is US. That is why one Japanese economist asked, people are saying America is investing into China, but their investment into China is 500 billions. Our investment into America is 2.5 trillions. So they have co-opted, just like if somebody borrows 10,000 crores from an Ambani for instance. If something happens to Anil Ambani, 10 banks will go with him, because he has borrowed 60,000 crores. If 6,000 people have borrowed 10,000 crore each, all 6,000 people cannot become bankrupt on one day. So the banks are strong. But if one person has borrowed 6,000 crores, 60,000 crores, so you are worried about him, your BP goes up, your palpitations go up. That is what is happening. These 10-15 countries which have put their money in America, they are praying for America. See, it is not that the American economy is weak, the American society is weak. This is what I am going to tell you later. How the strength of an economy is ultimately related to the strength of the society, the economic relationships among them. That will be the Indian model I am going to suggest, how it determines the savings, investment model, how entrepreneurial development takes place accordingly. Very, very fascinating story which you will hear in the coming weeks.
So this assumption which in fact all our models, all our financial models take this assumption that US dollar cannot fail. You know, in fact Black-Scholes starts from assuming that US dollar cannot fail, and in fact even all the economic models, but somehow so today we have reached that level where we can't do anything in spite we all knowing. In fact, we are not even able to consciously take a decision to move back to the dollar reserve, gold-backed currency model. We still need to peg it with US dollars. So how do we break
Not
this?
Not about we, I am talking about the world.
Anyone.
That means what will happen? This financial, there are many predictions. If the dollar fails, what will happen to the world? The world will have no common currency. For example, whether Chinese currency will replace American currency, only a country which runs state deficits can provide another country its money. America took the risk of risking everybody. That is how it became powerful. No country wants to take that risk. EU area is running trade surplus, China is running trade surplus, Japan is running trade surplus. So they developed with Gaga, they developed the euro. Euro is only a hedge currency, because how do you get euro? And the money that euro generates, the export surplus of euro, is used for investment within the euro region. There is not much money which they can spare for the world. So it is a huge shenanigan. It is a very fascinating study. In fact, I would like all of you to take up this study. Forgetting about other things, you will find life meaningful because when we went into this study, we never knew that it opens up possibility for such original thinking. You can probably become a Nobel laureate in the next 10 years if you begin working on it, because there is so much scope for original thinking. I am really ashamed that the Indian economic establishment has not produced a critical thinker. It has produced carbon copies, Xerox machines.
Sir, the Indian government is also equally in a bad condition, and it may become even worse if it continues the way it is also taking debts.
See, the only thing about the Indian government is the Indian people are saving, so the Indian government is borrowing only from the Indian people. But the American government is borrowing outside America because the American people are not saving. So we are in a better position like the Japanese. You know, in Japan, the government debt to GDP is almost 300%. But the entire debt is from the people of Japan. But if they had borrowed that money from outside, by this time they would have become insolvent. I do agree our government is the profligate policy of the government. If you want me to explain what has happened in the last 5 years, it is a catastrophic chaos. You know, our fiscal deficit in the last 5 years, last 5 years alone, last 4 years is 23 lakh crores. And you know, the revenue foregone by way of tax waivers is 30 lakh crores. It is all available in the budget documents. I have never seen any media writing about it, because budget document is 1000 pages, the finance minister's speech is 35 pages. So you read the finance minister's speech, which does not make reference to these things, though these facts exist in the budget documents. And the budget documents are so minutely and in small letters printed, unless you have a huge magnifying glass, you will not be able to read the figures. It is deliberately done. Huh? But please ask questions within the range of what we have discussed today. Okay. There.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. A lot of interesting questions, but I think
one question be there.
we'll take it tomorrow. Will be better.
Okay, anyhow, you ask the question. You shout.
So Norway has a divorce rate of 40%, and it's a very good country to live in. It's got a budget surplus. It's got everything. So I mean, if we talk that, you know,
Which country?
Norway.
Norway.
Do you think Norway or Sweden is a country? A 6 million population. Don't elevate them to the status of countries. I have sound reasons to tell you, I will tell you that.
We have very interesting discussion. Sorry for curtailing the question session. I mean, we can have it tomorrow. Tomorrow again we have a class, and on this interesting issue of dollar, in fact, I think we will have a full session, because the dollar story which Gurumurthy ji tells will easily take one session, and it's very interesting story. And we are having lot of guests from academics as well as from finance world. But today particularly we have very senior people who have come here all the way from US. So I think it's my duty to introduce them to you, and it is our honor that they are here. We have Shri Abhinav Dwivedi ji. Please come ahead. He's the distinguished alumnus of IIT 67 to 69 batch MTech, and he lives in Orlando currently, and he is the founder and vice president of Hindu University of America, which is a prominent educational institution in USA. And we also have Shri Brahman Agarwal ji. He is a philanthropist. He is born and raised in Kenya.
He is a very successful businessman in America.
Entrepreneur. Currently lives in Orlando.
Yeah, see, but he doesn't spend like Americans. I have stayed in his house. He lives like us. You know, most Indians live like Indians, and that is why their income is greater in America, their savings is greater, their prosperity is greater, their debt is nil.
Absolutely. See, actually, what said, all the waiters in the restaurants during the lunch hour, all American students. Because the families don't support them, they have to support themselves. And this question of contract based, that's why everybody's scared of litigation. Everybody's scared of.
Lawyers are happy.
Lawyers are happy. And then, of course, this other question he said about Indians do not like to fire people, and it happened to us because during the recession, we would not like to fire people, but we had professional management. And they said, well, we have to. So we saved some people, just even if they didn't have anything to do for a year.
He's the chairman of board of directors of Hindu University of America, and any one of you can speak.
Good evening. Thank you very much. It's good to be back
You can claim
on this campus, even though for a very short while. I spent 2 years walking up and down these various roads in thick of summer and so on. I spent many years in the industry, and after a while decided that I must do something different. And we started a small venture, a non-profit organization called Hindu University of America. It was on a similar thinking which Gurumurthy is trying to explain to you, that to alternate way of to think about various issues. He's talking about an alternative way of thinking about economic system. I don't know whether this lecture was on economics, psychology, sociology, or all of those combined. Because in our Indian thinking, it is always a holistic thinking. It is never pointed, single, fragmented. And to bring that point home, we decided to start that university, to bring our Indian wisdom in a university format for American audience, American students, and also our own people who are growing up, staying there. And that's a postgraduate school. It has been now going on for 25 years. And it's an online school. And all areas of what we call Hindu studies are included under that umbrella of Hindu University of America. Because we have, in our tradition, a totally different way of looking at issues and problems and society and man and systems and so on. It is never fragmented, never in a very narrow way. So that is a thinking we want to bring to that country, that there are different ways of looking at systems. And our own culture, our own tradition, our own background, our rich heritage provides that platform. And we thought it would be a great idea to provide that one to the American system. And that is what we are doing. So we just happen to be visiting various cities in this country to see if we can recruit some scholars, engage them in various kinds of activity, and bring a newer dimension to our university. And that is the purpose of our visit. And when we heard today that he is speaking here, Gurumurthy is speaking, I said, I must go there. It has been a while since I have listened to him. And it's always a pleasure listening to him, because it always provides such a different perspective and such a thorough analysis of the issue that it just grips you. So thank you, Gurumurthy ji. It brought me back to my own campus, so it's a pleasure. I'll give it to...
See, as far as America is concerned, 15 years before the nuclear bomb was exploded, people thought you people ride camels and things like that, snake charmers and all that. Only after that, they recognize that something, there is some country like India, and now most of the universities want to have an orientation. What is Indian history? What is Indian culture? How do we treat them? How do we deal with them? So we have had a lot of challenges, as Abhinav said. Most of our people went there, $7, $8, and they had to work and for survival. And we have a lot of other challenges also, like culturally. Everything American is the norm, is the right thing to do. And everything Indian is looked down upon, like marriages and culture and temples and things like that. And biggest thing we were accused of was Indians worship millions of gods and goddesses. And then, of course, big challenge how to explain. Nobody is there to explain. And then even children, they had a lot of problems how to face the questions from the students, their friends in colleges and schools. Like biggest question was all these millions of gods and goddesses Indians worship. And we had a big challenge. And Hindu University, as Abhinav said, has come up with a small booklet which explains the symbolic meaning of all the murtis in the temples. There's a lot to learn. Art of management can be learned from just one picture. So a lot of murtis are symbolic, and we can learn a lot from it. So this is one of the, we have other publications also, but this is one of the publications which we have come up with, explaining the symbolic meaning of the murtis. Once again, thank you, Gurumurthy ji, and all of you for giving us this opportunity to come and share this beautiful lecture. Beautiful, I've learned a lot today from Gurumurthy. Thank you.